I never thought leaving quietly could ever feel like the hardest decision of my life, but here I am replaying every detail in my head, wishing I could erase some of it and yet knowing I couldn't. My name is Marcus and I'm 38 years old. A year ago, I walked away from a life I thought was mine forever. My wife, my home, the life we had built together, because I discovered something I never imagined I would have to: betrayal. It started like any ordinary evening, just the usual dinner, the kind of comfortable silence we used to enjoy, when I noticed the text messages. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just harmless chatter between friends, but as I scrolled through her phone, the words blurred into something unmistakable. The messages weren't casual. They weren't innocent. They were intimate, personal, the kind of messages you only send when something, or someone, else matters more than the person sitting across from you. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She had been having an affair, and I had been blissfully unaware, living in what I now knew was a carefully constructed illusion of trust and love. I spent that night wide awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that there must be some explanation. Maybe it was a mistake, a fleeting connection, something she would regret tomorrow. But deep down I already knew the truth. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't throw accusations across the room. I did something that felt almost cowardly at the time, but in reality, it was the only way I could preserve my dignity. I left quietly. I packed a few essentials, left a note on the kitchen counter that simply said, "I need to find myself. Goodbye." And just like that, I was gone. The days that followed were a strange mix of relief and emptiness. On one hand, I no longer had to live under the constant suspicion and betrayal. On the other, the silence was deafening. Our home, once filled with laughter and arguments and shared dreams, felt hollow. I couldn't bring myself to tell my friends or family the full story. They would have judged her, judged me, and the pity in their eyes would have been unbearable. So I carried the weight alone, walking through my days with a quiet, simmering anger and a sadness I couldn't shake. I tried to move on, as they say, and for a while it seemed like I could. Work kept me busy, my friends distracted me, and I started to focus on myself in ways I had neglected during the marriage. I learned to enjoy small things again: a quiet morning coffee, a long walk by the river, a book that had nothing to do with someone else's happiness. I rebuilt routines that were mine alone. I didn't date immediately. I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure I ever would be ready. But there was a peace in the distance, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. And then, one rainy afternoon exactly 12 months later, she showed up. I was standing in my doorway, a cup of tea warming my hands, when I saw her figure appear through the mist. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, the kind of person you notice not because of what she carries, but because of what she has lost. Her eyes were red, her hair damp from the rain, and when she spoke, her voice trembled with the weight of everything she had done and everything she had lost. "Marcus, I need to talk," she said. There was a vulnerability in her tone I had never heard before, a raw, unguarded honesty that made my chest tighten. I didn't invite her in immediately. I just stood there, silent, letting her words hang between us like a fragile thread that could snap at any moment. She continued, "I've made so many mistakes. I don't know how to fix any of it, but I can't keep pretending that nothing happened." I could hear the tears threatening to spill in her voice, the kind of tears that once might have drawn me closer, that might have made me forgive too quickly. But not anymore. I had learned the hard way that forgiveness is not about restoring what was broken. It's about protecting what remains of yourself. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I studied her, the familiar lines on her face, the way her shoulders slumped, the way her eyes avoided mine. The person standing in front of me was both the woman I had loved and the stranger who had betrayed me. And in that paradox, I realized something profound. Time hadn't erased the pain, it had sharpened it. I remembered the nights I spent wondering if she would regret it, if she would ever feel the emptiness she had forced me to live with. And now, here she was, finally acknowledging it, finally showing up with the weight of truth on her shoulders. She tried to explain, fumbling over words as though searching for a justification that didn't exist. "It wasn't just about him," she said, her voice breaking. I felt lost, I felt invisible. I wanted to say something, to ask the questions that had haunted me for months, to demand explanations that might never satisfy me. But I stayed quiet, letting her spill the confession that had been years in the making. And as she spoke, I realized that this was not an apology I could accept. Not yet, maybe never. Some doors, once closed, cannot be reopened without losing something of yourself in the process.